Welcome back to the lesson number 5 on Blender. Finally, I'll tell you about materials. First, check that the rendering engine is set to cycles, here. But what is cycles? This is an embedded rendering engine, really photorealistic. It is a nodal engine, so this means that you consider a material as a complex iteration of parameters, not necessarily linear. You'll discover in this lesson the nodes and the node editor, where you can create your material. I suggest you to buy PBR Theory and Blender to deeply understand the material and the behavior of the incident light on a surface. To add a new material on a surface, go in the Material tab and click on Add New Material. So, change the Timeline Editor to Node Editor. Immediately, you can see this diagram, including 2 nodes and the 1 connection. In the nodes, there are a lot of information, depending on the node type. To add nodes, you can type Shift-A and choose the node in the menus. There are different types of nodes: input, output, shaders, texture, mathematic, vector. To understand the syntax, let me explain you in some examples. In this diagram, add a glossy node from shaders and also a mix shader node. Connect the output sockets of the shaders to the input of the mix node and this one to the output node. Read with me. The material, the output, is a mix between the color, diffuse, and the reflection, glossy, at 50%. You can change this factor value. Type now Shift-Z to show a pre-rendered view. It is very simply but not realistic, because the balance between the diffuse color and the glossiness is not linear in the real world. It changes depending on the incidence angle between the surface and the light. A parameter governs this variable, the index of refraction, IOR, including in the Fresnel node. Type Z 2 times and then type Shift-A and from input nodes choose Fresnel. Connect the Fresnel node to the factor input in the mix shader. Now type Shift-Z and watch the difference rotating the view. The glossiness is higher where the angle of incidence between light and surface is lower, and pretty opaque where it is close to 90 degrees. The index of refraction is variable depending on the material. You can find a list of index of refraction in internet. So, you understood that a material is a mix between the diffuse colors and the glossiness, and the balance is governed by the Fresnel node. This scheme is valid for every dielectrical materials, but not for metals and glasses. In the diffuse node, you can change the main color of the surface or add a texture. So, a texture is not the material, but just a component to be connected to the diffuse node here. Add a texture node and connect it to the diffuse shader. Click to open and choose a texture. Try now to render, clicking Shift-Z. The texture is not correctly displayed. Why? Because you haven't said to Cycles how the texture must be located, rotated and scaled on the surface. To do this, open a new editor named UV Image Editor. To understand U and V, consider that in a spatial coordinate system of the textures, U is X and V is Y. Open the texture in this editor. Go now in the 3D view. Enter in Edit mode and select the upper face of the cube. Then type U and from the menu Unwrap. In the UV Image Editor, the selected face will be displayed. Move it with G, scale it with S, as you need. Now type Shift-Z and the texture is displayed on the face as in the UV Image Editor. You can now define the unwrapping method of the other faces. Obviously, in the materials, there are many other parameters as bump. Add a bump node and 5 the bump texture corresponding to the previous one. This typical texture is a black and white map. The bump node will consider that where the pixels are white or light, the relief will be up, where dark or black, down. Connect the bump texture node to the 8th socket in the bump node, and this one to the vector socket of the two shaders. You can regulate the high value here. Type Shift-Z to show the result. For metals, the node setup is different. Add a sphere and add new material. Remove the diffuse node and add a glossy node. You can regulate the roughness of the surface here. Add another mesh, for example the monkey. Add to the monkey a new material and remove diffuse node. For glasses, you can use the glass node, but the result is not physically correct. You need to modify the configuration. Add a transparent node and also a mix node. Connect glass and transparent node to the mix node. Now add the input node light path and choose its shadow rays as balance factor between glass and transparent. We need also to add another factor parameter, is refraction rays, to be added to is shadow rays as condition. Add a math node from the converter nodes and set it as add. Now connect the two sockets of the light path node to the math node and this one to the FAC socket of the mix shader. The glass is now more realistic. The surface will be transparent or reflective depending on the index of refraction out of shadow rays, and the refraction rays. Thanks for watching, stay tuned!